Helldivers coming to Xbox. Yes. I don't know if you've seen this, but this was reported by Insider Gaming, who were reporting it from the Xbox Era podcast, where those hosts were talking about, and this is very, very, very preliminary, they even mentioned it in the thing, but there are these early talks apparently happening about making Helldivers a multi-platform release and bringing it over to Xbox. Now, this would be pretty much unprecedented when it comes to Sony's releases. They have kept an incredibly tight ship over the years. There have been, games that have gone cross-platform, but very rare and only if usually they've had like a 1-year exclusivity deal. But this is pretty much their most successful live service game ever. So to me and to many others, I think it makes sense that they want to keep that player base building, right? And if they can establish, once the sort of PlayStation players kind of run dry and the PC players run dry, why not push it to another console? Maybe get a reinvigoration with a major expansion further on down the line. Would you guys want to see this happen at all? And what do you think it would indicate for Sony going forward?
This is potentially great. I've played some Helldivers 2. I played it right as it came out. I haven't put it on for a little while, but I do need to get back into it. The time I had with it was great. I'm not much of a live service guy, but this felt like a really solid game that just had a live service kind of built around it.
Yeah.
And a game where you were kind of creating your own narratives, which felt really, really great. It was really good fun. I was playing it with Ewan mostly. And he was so into it, it really kind of energized me playing it. And every little moment of that game felt great. I think you've played it a bit, haven't you, Josh?
Just a little bit. Nowhere near as much as I should have, because there's been so many games.
So many games, yeah. But it's been a great experience. And I do think that, as you say, once the PlayStation and PC players start kind of drying up a little bit, once the numbers drop a bit, then going, hey, it's on Xbox now, you might kind of, you'll get that reinvigoration. You'll have kind of a bunch of hyped Xbox players come in to play it. And hopefully that'll kind of reinvigorate, again, your PlayStation and your PC players who will go, oh, there's a bunch of new players who are really excited for this again. And we're kind of starting from the ground up. Because what I'm hearing about Helldivers at the moment is that, it went from this game with a really enthusiastic little fan base to a game that has a massive fan base that are now completely focused on meta builds.
Right, yeah.
And I had to have you explain a meta build to me earlier, Dan, is that it stops it from being a game and it turns it into a loot grind instead, where all you're trying to do is kind of maximize efficiency and you're no longer actually having fun with a game that embraces chaos. Like, one really great aspect of the community was when the devs kind of announced, right, we're bringing mechs into the game. But the way that they integrated that was, right, X planet, Robotopolis, is like, that's where the mech factory is, but it's overrun by automatons. So what we need you to do, Helldiver, is dive to that planet and liberate those mechs. So then the fact that everyone had to do it in order to get the mechs, they all jumped on that and as a community worked together and liberated the mechs, and now we all have mechs. And that's a really great piece of kind of really organic, that's meta storytelling, but meta in the other sense.
In the good way.
Yeah, in the good way. That's like a kind of meta-textual, incredible way of telling that game's story just through player engagement.
That is the promise of live service that I've always wanted to see fulfilled. And by the way, I'm so bad for chasing metas in games. Like, when I was playing Call of Duty Warzone, the meta kept changing and I was pumping so many hours and it's just keeping up, and it became a second job. But yeah, with Helldivers and the way it's approaching its storytelling, Dan, you'll be able to chime in on this more as a big Fortnite player. But when I see people playing Fortnite, right? It's not my game. I've tried to get into it before, but I'm so jealous when they have the big events, and I'm so always kind of in awe at how they do their content drops. Every time something changes in Fortnite, it feels like a huge deal. Yeah. And I don't know why I know the live services until Helldivers. I've managed to achieve that. Like, with a always online living game, the joy to me has always been the idea of developers dropping or changing things within it and you discovering that organically, not having a blog post that Hawkeye is now in the game and you need to pay £10 to unlock him, Like, when Fortnite blows up its map, or when it has a crossover with Galactus or whoever it is. Sorry, Dan, my reference point's so over this point. It just feels big, and I hope Helldivers kind of continues that, and for me, acts as a blueprint for Sony going forward. You know, they are not as all in as they were previously on live service games, but they're still committed to making a bunch. Yeah. And if Helldivers is the template, rather than even something that I quite like Destiny 2, I think it's a good bar to aspire to. I don't know how Fortnite does it now, Dan, but does that still have the same level of intrigue, or is that sort of waned?
You have like the seasons within the chapters, then the chapters end, and that's when the big event happens. But there's always like constant updates every week, new content drops. Like there's an Avatar crossover at the minute, like The Legend of Aang or Last Airbender, or whatever it is. And they like use that to put weapons in, skins in, and all that. And that continues with like the Billie Eilish thing that you were saying.
Yes.
And it's such like an organic experience within the game. It's just like fun to do. And coming back to Helldivers, like I'm primarily an Xbox player, and I do have a PlayStation, but I've not played Helldivers yet.
Hey, you got a PC now, so
I do. But hearing this, it makes us want to wait until it comes to Xbox, if it does. But I was just thinking, Xbox kind of shared Sea of Thieves and Pentiment and all that, and it's kind of like, oh, is this the opening up of potentially having more of this in future? And that gets me really excited because I want to play Helldivers. I really do. And I think this would be just good for the players.
Dan, you got a great brain, because that's what I was segueing into next. Like you said, this news, and I know, again, very early, if it even happens, is coming off Microsoft kind of opening those floodgates in a way, really experimenting with putting, at this moment in time, quote unquote, smaller games on the PlayStation Store, but that seems like it's been a success. Like before it dropped, Sea of Thieves was the most pre-ordered game on the PlayStation Store. You got Hi-Fi Rush in there, you got Pentiment, and you know, back when that was first announced, the rumors were that something like Starfield could eventually come over. And I always wonder, this is my conspiracy brain, whether the backlash to that initially made them not go full in announcing the likes of Starfield or Indiana Jones or whatever it was to be coming right now. I wonder whether they're playing, Microsoft always is, because they buy these studios for billions of dollars, but I wonder if they're playing the long game with it, just starting with already released games like Sea of Thieves.
Ease game as into
Ease game is into the idea of having these Xbox games come over to the competitors' platforms, and then at one point in the future go, Starfield's with its DLC, it's going to launch on PlayStation as well. And don't worry, because it's still on Game Pass, but now we're just expanding that player base and ultimately getting more money in. I think that will be more well received for something like Helldivers because of the live service element and because it's already on PC, so those barriers have already been broken down. But yeah, if you told me 6 months ago that this was going to be a rumor, I'd have probably just discredited it, right? I'd have been like, that's not something Sony does. But within that 6 month period, we've seen both the companies start to make these changes. And even in the Insider Gaming report, they mentioned that the people at Xbox Era said that the new CEO of Sony, following Jim Ryan, is apparently more open to this multi-platform idea to begin with. So it's like, is this the start of something bigger?
Yeah, hopefully. Did Xbox lean in and say, hey, everyone, imagine if there wasn't a console war, Is this the start of the console peace?
Ironically, Helldivers might be the game that ends.
An endless war within Helldivers brings peace among gamers.
So I think before we finish, Dan, I want to go back to what you said there. I found that really interesting, that you look at something like Helldivers, all the buzz that it's received, the likes of Joe Ewan talking about it, the entire internet talking about how good it is, and then you see something like that, and that makes you want to hold off, even though you do have a PlayStation and you do have a PC. Why is that? Is that because you're more into the Xbox ecosystem?
Yeah, I am. I prefer the controller for one, and I think my friendship group are all on Xbox as well.
Right.
So I think if it was to come to Xbox, we'd all play it together.
Yes.
And I think that's why I haven't played it already.
I wonder how crossplay affects that mentality, because crossplay is kind of like magic to me. We're all very similar ages, so we all grew up with the idea of, if you wanted to play a game on the Xbox 360, if you wanted to play Gears of War, you kind of had to play on there unless you were maybe playing with your PC friends or whatever. If you were playing for whatever reason, it was pretty good. The multiplayer for Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriot, you were doing it on PlayStation 3, right? And now, even though it's been a concept and a technology that's been around forever, when I can crossplay with people on PC or an Xbox and we're playing Apex Legends or something, I'm like, man, we are in the future. We are so in the future. But I always wondered if those knocking down those barriers meant that people weren't as bothered about going where their friends are in terms of the ecosystem or all playing together on a certain console. I know there are obviously it's easy and there's more ease and it's more accessible if you're all in the same space. But like now, I used to be so concerned about where my friends were gaming. And now I kind of couldn't care less because I know if there is a big game, 9 times out of 10, it's going to have that crossplay feature and I can kind of enjoy it across the board.
Do you know what doesn't have crossplay?
Go on.
I found out last week. Fallout 76.
Doesn't
So
it?
we were in the Fallout mood. We were going to start Fallout, like 4 of my friends, and one of them was playing on PC. So we got out of the vault.
no.
Said, I can't join your game. And it's like, yeah, it's not crossplay apparently. And it's like in this day and age, everything should be crossplay. And like you can jump in a Discord chat now with PlayStation people and I'm just all for more accessibility and more ways to play.
Absolutely.
And I think with Microsoft opening the floodgates on that, hopefully, I can't see Sony doing like a Spider-Man or a God of War. The big dogs, they're going to stay on the Sony platform.
Yeah.
But other things I think potentially could come.
I think it helps. I think it's also important to note that as far as I'm aware, the last time I checked, the developers of Helldivers, who I'm completely blanking on now, like they're a second party studio. Sony doesn't own them outright like they do a Naughty Dog. But usually, again, I need to double check the details on this, going off script at this moment in time. Usually when Sony partners with a second party, Sony owns the IP. So like they own Ratchet and Clank, for instance, before they bought Insomniac. So I wonder if that's a factor as well, where they're going, yeah, of course, we own Helldivers, but we don't own the studio. And if the studio wants to expand, are they open to that? I wonder if, going forward, we see, like we were saying, they've eased it in with these second-party titles, these partnership titles, before moving maybe to some of their live service first parties. But I do think that's probably way down the line.
Was it Kena Bridge of Spirits?
Yes.
I've heard that's maybe coming to Xbox as well, which is good. And the thing is with the older games, like you've got God of War 2018. Imagine them releasing that on Xbox. Imagine the money that they'd make. It's just... It's good business sense to do it. That's it. It's an old game at this point. Everyone on PlayStation's played it, so why not?
That's that. I mean, we saw the surge in sales when those games came to PC, right? So you can only imagine that it does come to Xbox in the grand scheme of things. Again, I kind of almost believe that I'm saying it and we're talking about it because 6 months ago, again, probably would have said, Dan Durkin, that's insane. But... probably 6 years ago, I was saying the same thing about crossplay when Sony was adamant they were never going to do crossplay. Like they hated the idea that people wanted them to do crossplay, and they fought tooth and nail for it not to happen. And now they're like, hey guys, you want to play crossplay? Hey, come on, you can do whatever the hell you want. I don't care. So we have seen that evolution and that progression. And at this point, with what we've been through in the industry, with all these acquisitions, with how tumultuous and ever changing everything is, I can totally see a new CEO coming in and saying exactly what you did, right? Like, these games are costing hundreds of $1 billion to produce. We need to find a way to make more money on them. Why not bring those titles to Xbox years and years after the fact? Again, I think that's probably a long-term way off thing, but if those conversations are happening, I think we might start seeing the shift right now. But that is speculation for the time.